The leaders of Japan, South Korea and the United States are set to cement a growing allegiance at their first standalone summit in the thick of an increasingly tense geopolitical arena. U.S. President Joe Biden will host the summit at the Camp David retreat in Maryland, about 100 kilometers from Washington, D.C. It is a show of force by the allies in the face of China's assertiveness in the Asia-Pacific and North Korea's military threats. The centerpiece of the summit will reportedly be a pledge or a duty to consult each other in moments of crisis. It is a move that's significant for Seoul and Tokyo, which share a long, prickly history. The leaders will also seek ways to deepen cooperation in areas of economy, technology and security. For more, we speak to three of our correspondents. Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C. Lim Young-suk, she is in Seoul, and Mitchell Ishida in Tokyo. But let's start with you, Caroline, first. What does President Biden hope to gain by elevating this meeting to the status of a special summit at a presidential retreat?
Well, is incredibly important. It gives us an idea of just the priority of the United States when it comes to this trilateral.
Well, we look to be having some kind of technical difficulties with Caroline. As we wait to get her back, perhaps we have some of our other correspondents on hand.
From South Korea. Thanks for that, Jill. A fear of military provocation by North Korea, all but certain to cast a shadow over talks between the three leaders. Our Seoul spy agency has already warned it sees signs of Pyongyang possibly preparing to test launch a long-range ballistic missile, an apparent protest against not only this upcoming summit, but military drills between the US and South Korea, which will start next week. For more, CNA's Lim Young-suk joins us live from Seoul. Young-suk, how is the North Korean question likely to be addressed by the three leaders?
Well, North Korea is definitely going to top the agenda at this meeting, as it is expected to strengthen the trilateral security cooperation at a time when North Korea is increasing its military activities and raising the tensions here on the Korean Peninsula and also the region with its nuclear missile programs. Now, analysts here are saying that this meeting is meant to serve as a show of force among the three countries against the provocations by North Korea. And experts say that this meeting alone, the fact that the three leaders are meeting, is sending a very strong message to North Korea, saying that if North Korea poses a threat to any one of us, then it poses a threat to all of us, and that Pyongyang won't be dealing with just one country, but all three countries. And that is a very strong message that the leaders want to send to North Korea. And that's why the South Korean intelligence agency believes that North Korea could take some kind of provocative actions to show its disapproval of this trilateral summit and also the upcoming military drills between the United States and South Korea starting next week. Now, President Yoon Suk-yeol, in his speech to mark Liberation Day earlier this week, said this summit will set a new milestone in trilateral cooperation that will contribute to peace not just on the Korean Peninsula, but the Indo-Pacific region, which many analysts here are saying that they think that South Korea is from now on planning to play a greater role than before, together with the United States and Japan, to promote peace in the Indo-Pacific region following this trilateral meeting at Camp David.
Yoon-suk, that this summit can take place at all reflects what many consider an historic thaw in ties between Seoul and Tokyo. How is that being read by the South Korean public?
Well, yes, it does. It's definitely the trilateral summit is made possible because South Korea has decided to put aside the historical disputes with Japan that had, strained relations for decades, and instead work together with Japan to deter the threats from North Korea. Now, reaction here is mixed. I mean, there are lots of supporters and lots of people who feel that President Yoon Suk-yeol is taking the right direction, that, it is time to move the relations forward, and that, they should sort of deal with the historical disputes when South Korea needs to, but at the same time that they do need to work together, especially with this, the region facing growing threats from North Korea. But there are also people still who feel that the Japanese government needs to apologize, get its historical facts correct when it comes to issues of what happened during Japan's colonial rule over Korea for 35 years from 1910. And those issues include the comfort women and the forced labor. And, in fact, the opposition leader, Lee Jae-myung, was earlier saying that South Koreans will be watching this summit very closely to see if President Yoon just gives the U.S. and Japan presents and gifts and comes back home with nothing in his hands, saying that that is not what the South Korean people want. And so reaction is mixed, but I think what President Yoon Suk-yeol is trying to do is to show the Korean public and to convince them that it is very important for South Korea and also for the two countries to work together more closely and to work in coordination so that they can bolster this military cooperation in this region together with the United States amid the rising threats in this region, especially from North Korea.
Oh, thanks so much for that. CNA's Lim Yeon-sok reporting live to us there from Seoul.
From Seoul, we want to get the perspective from Japan. CNA's Michio Ishida joins us from Tokyo. Michio, in Mr. Kishida's own words, prior to the leaving of the summit, he said that security, the environment rather, surrounding Japan is becoming more severe. What specifically was he referring to, and how does he expect it to be addressed at Camp David?
Well, let me refer you to Japan's defense white paper, which was released just this month. The message is that the international community is facing its greatest trial since World War II. It's on the back of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, China rapidly enhancing its military capabilities and amplifying its unilateral changes to the status quo by force, and North Korea advancing its nuclear and missile development. Now, on the back of such tensions surrounding Japan, Mr. Kishida introduced a new security and defense policy and a defense build-up program in December last year. Now, analysts here say that Mr. Kishida should take advantage of South Korean President Yoon's friendly stance towards Japan. Now, Mr. Yoon is not accusing Japan of its wartime aggression, unlike its predecessors. And this is really rare. And this momentum, analysts say, that is Japan should really work together with its only ally, the United States, involve South Korea so they can hold joint defense arrangement.
And Michio, Japan is set to pump wastewater, we all recall, from its Fukushima nuclear plant soon. Now, that's a move that is going to really stress test this relationship with South Korea, isn't it? Tell us what to expect.
Well, Japanese media think that Mr. Kishida will ask support from the U.S., Mr. Biden, and South Korea, Mr. Yoon, on the discharge of wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific, and to write their support into a joint statement. Now, last month, a nuclear watchdog, IAEA, or the International Atomic Energy Agency, gave its assessment that Japan's plans are consistent with its safety standards. That's after spending 2 years sending the IAEA task force to Fukushima nuclear plant, and Fukushima retrieved its treated water for testing in its laboratories all around the world. And Mr. Yoon, as a result, supported the IAEA report. But then we do hear of oppositions in South Korea on the release of this wastewater. And the Japanese government has been holding numerous sessions with the Korean government officials so they can understand what Japan Tokyo Electric Power Company are doing in terms of the safety measures taken, that contaminated water from the cooling of the fuel rod will go through this process called the Advanced Liquid Processing System, make sure radiation materials are reduced to safe levels except for tritium, which is a radioactive isotope of hydrogen, which cannot be removed. So this will be diluted and the water released into the sea.
All right, leave it there for now. Michiru Ishida, CNA's reporter, correspondent, live from Tokyo there.
Let's go back to Caroline Malone. She joins us live from Washington, D.C. And apologies for the technical difficulties we had just a few moments ago. Now, of course, we're picking up on this, what the U.S. has branded a landmark breakthrough summit, trilateral summit involving the U.S., South Korea and Japan. Caroline, of course, the U.S. is playing host to this. What does President Biden hope to gain by elevating this meeting to the status of a special summit at a retreat that is known for its diplomatic breakthroughs?
Well, absolutely. The venue is key to today's talks. From the US perspective, it's really unprecedented to be able to get the leaders of these three countries into a room. And it's because they do now have these aligned concerns, particularly when it comes to China and North Korea. Now, in terms of what they hope to achieve from today's talks, they're looking at having a joint hotline so the three leaders can talk to each other, consult each other going forward. And that's supposed to be set up by the end of this year. We're also hearing there will be an agreement to have annual trilateral meetings directly between the three countries. So not just bilaterals between the US and South Korea and the US and Japan, as has happened in previous years, but actually having all three leaders consult each other. And that is what they're hoping to really formalize today, a duty to consult each other and to put it into writing in a way that is institutionalized. So no matter who is in charge in future years, whether in the US, South Korea or Japan, that is something that the three countries have committed to.
And that's essentially, they're institutionalizing whatever progress has been made in the last 2 years so that any setback in any one country is less likely to happen. Is that what they're aiming to achieve at this summit?
Absolutely, yes. But it has taken a long time to get here. In fact, I heard just yesterday from senior Biden administration officials, and they were saying only a year ago they didn't think it would be possible to have this level of trilateral meetings between the three countries. And it's largely thanks to the diplomacy of Japan and South Korea, to Yoon and Kishida, that they've managed to get to this point. We heard there from the other reporters in Japan and South Korea some of the reservations that are happening ongoing in those countries. But those leaders are really taking the role to lead and move forward with the diplomacy. And it's because, from the US perspective, they are now aligned on these concerns. And those concerns include increasing aggressiveness from China, particularly in the South China Sea and towards Taiwan, and also North Korea and its increasing ballistic missile testing. And that's led in part to some of the movements between the US and South Korea. The US has committed to have nuclear-powered submarines in South Korea. We have that right now at port. First time in decades seeing something like that. And also relationships such as the Quad relationship that includes Japan and also India and Australia, in which the US is really trying to formalize and really trying to improve relations, not just with these three countries, but with all its allies in the region. But today's meetings at Camp David, they do really see as being unprecedented and as really setting the agenda going forward for the 21st century.
Oh, thanks so much for that. Caroline Malone speaking to us live from Washington, D.C.